Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your wife's favorite sports show. So basically, what we're doing here is each week I'm going to drop an episode on Tuesday Monday night, Tuesday morning, before the college football playoff rankings drop. Obviously, this week it's the inaugural rankings of the year. I'm just going to give you guys a quick kind of prediction as to how I think that they're going to go. I'll go 1 through 6, so I'll give you the top four, and then the two teams that'll be on the outside looking in. And then I'll give you three teams to look out for and kind of my reasonings for where I put them, where I put them. No editing in this one. This is just going to be off the cuff. I got some notes on my computer, and I'm just gonna bear with me here. It's gonna be podcasty, but you're just gonna be staring at my face the whole time. So if you don't like staring at my face, open another tab. That's what I usually do. But all right, so inaugural playoff rankings. Let's get it. Number one, of course, we're going with Alabama. Duh. They're obviously going to get tested against LSU. LSU has a pretty good defense, far and away the best defense that Bama's going to play all year, barring the SEC. Well, even in the SEC championship game, I think LSU's defense is the best that Bama will play all season. It's going to be in Death Valley, so that's going to be a test. I think at this point the line is about 14.5. It'll be close for a while, but I think Bama will pull away late and they'll ultimately cover. Way too many horses on that roster. They got 5 stars backing up 5 stars. That's too easy for them. So Bama at number 1, I don't think anybody had anything different at this point. At number 2, Clemson. A little bit of a surprise there for some of you. I think Notre Dame has a stronger strength of schedule overall, but Notre Dame hasn't really played up to the standard that Clemson has. I mean, Clemson has been beating the brakes off of teams all season long. Them and Alabama are far and away the two best teams in college football right now. I think Notre Dame has a better win over Michigan than Clemson has on its schedule this year, but Clemson has just been so dominant. Their lone test, so to speak, came against a very good Syracuse team that nobody saw coming this year. And they were down to their third-string quarterback, that Bryce kid, after Kelly Bryant got benched and decided to leave school. And Trevor Lawrence obviously got a concussion in that game. But Clemson and Alabama are the two best teams in the country. I think they're the only two teams that can legitimately win the college football playoff this year. That doesn't mean that another team won't win it this year by maybe a stroke of luck or catching these guys on an off night or something, but I think these are the two best teams in the country, and then 3 and 4 are not very close. That being said, number 3, Notre Dame, as we mentioned. I think they have a sneaky good strength of schedule. They play teams like Stanford and Virginia Tech, who are good but not great teams. They have the best win probably of just about anybody in the country in their opening week win against Michigan rather, at Notre Dame. And they look like a much different team with Ian Book at quarterback. They started with Brandon Wimbush. They look like a much different team. So that kind of balances out the Michigan win, because I know a lot of people are saying that Michigan was not as good in week 1 as they are now. Well, neither is Notre Dame, so that I think that kind of cancels it out a little bit. But yeah, they're a much different team with Ian Book. Coming up, they have these interesting games against Northwestern and Syracuse. Northwestern is sneaky good. They've kind of had this giant killer label thrusted upon them in the last couple years. You know, they play Ohio State close. They beat Wisconsin last week. You never know what you're going to get when you play Northwestern. It's in Notre Dame, so that should help a little bit, because as we all know, no one likes to play in Evanston. And then, of course, Syracuse is exceeding all expectations this year. They look a lot better. They look like a team that you can't. This isn't your dad's Syracuse or your uncle's Syracuse. You can't overlook these guys. At number 4, I have LSU. So two teams from the SEC right now are in. I don't think that's going to be the case at the end of the year, but right now, I think if you ask me to rank the top 4 teams and how the committee is going to rank their top 4 teams, you have to put LSU in there. I think they have the most impressive resume in the entire country. They have wins over ranked Mississippi State team, a ranked Georgia team, throttling both of those teams. It was never close. They beat Miami on a neutral site the opening weekend. Of course, that doesn't really look like as impressive of a win now. Miami hasn't really held up their end of the bargain. Same thing with Auburn. That win looked a lot more impressive on the Plains against a top 10 Auburn team. They're now not ranked anymore. But those wins over Mississippi State and Georgia definitely hold up. Like I said, probably the most impressive resume in the entire country, in all of college football. And their one loss is one of the best losses in college football as well. A one-possession loss in the Swamp is nothing to hang your head over. When you play a team like Florida, they were honoring the 08 team. A lot of emotion in that one. It was close late. They actually had the lead in the fourth quarter. They looked really good. However, not very hopeful about their chances on Saturday against Bama. But then again, they play very good defense, and anything can happen on a Saturday night in Death Valley. At number 5, just missing the top 4 right now, of course. Now, this is all subject to change over the next couple weeks, and it will. We have Michigan. Michigan, along with LSU, probably has one of the best losses in the entire country. Probably a better loss, honestly, than LSU. LSU lost to a 2-loss Florida team. Michigan loses to an undefeated Notre Dame team at Notre Dame. First game of the season, so they're a different team now. Of course, as we already discussed, Notre Dame is a different team this year too, at this point in the season. Very, very nice wins over teams like Wisconsin, Michigan State on the road. They have a big test coming up in Happy Valley. And, of course, at the end of the year against Ohio State, which I actually like their chances in that game because of their defense. I think Michigan's defense is probably one of the most impressive defensive units in the country. Their defensive coordinator, whose name is escaping me right now, John Brown, I think. He's phenomenal. He's got that team playing at an impressive level of play. They have one of the best defenses in the country, definitely the best defense far and away in the Big Ten. We'll see how they handle Penn State this weekend in Happy Valley. That's going to be a tough one. And then, of course, at the end of the year, Ohio State. You never know what's going to happen in that game. Rivalry game. It's in the Big House, I think, this year. Is it in the Big House? We'll find out, I guess. I can't remember if it's even or odd years. No, I think it's at the Horseshoe this year. But anyway, Michigan at number 5. I really like their resume. I really like they have a quality loss, if you want to call it that. Their defense is playing phenomenally, and they got a couple tough tests ahead of them. But if they win out, they're in. They're absolutely in because one of those SEC teams is going to fall out, which is going to open up perfectly for a one-loss Big Ten team like Michigan. And then finally at number 6, the third SEC team on this list. I know you might think I'm biased, but SEC and whatnot. But I think Georgia. I think you absolutely have to include Georgia on this one. Their one loss is on the road at LSU. Very tough place to play. Probably the hardest place in the country to go in and win is Death Valley. Georgia has a very good running game, as we saw this weekend against Florida. Florida's run defense can be a little leaky at times, but Georgia did a really good job of controlling the line of scrimmage, pounding the rock, taking advantage of things when they could, especially Florida losing It's two starting cornerbacks. That's never easy to overcome. So Jake Fromm took advantage of that. They're a solid team, top to bottom. They've recruited really well the last couple of years. Their run defense is a little shaky. I think it has to improve, but they showed a lot bouncing back from that LSU loss and winning a neutral site game against Florida. Okay, 3 teams to look out for. These are teams that aren't necessarily in line to get into the college football playoffs, but if things fall their way, they could definitely get in. My first team is Kentucky. I know that sounds absolutely wild at this point. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year that Kentucky would have 1 loss and they would be in the hunt for both an SEC championship and a national championship, I would have thought you were nuts. Wilson, their quarterback, he's an athlete. He's not a great quarterback. I would have never guessed that he would have gotten him this far. Benny Snell might be SEC Offensive Player of the Year. He's amazing. Their defense is salty as hell. They're probably going to be ranked 10th, 9th, somewhere in that range. When these playoff rankings come out, I have no idea. But they have to beat Georgia and then win out the rest of their schedule, which I think they have a game against Tennessee, and then I can't remember who else they play. I think they have that last weekend in November, that rivalry game against Louisville, who's absolutely god-awful, so they can definitely win that. But Kentucky has to beat Georgia, win the rest of their schedule, and then go to the SEC championship game and play, presumably, Alabama. If they beat Georgia and Alabama, there's no way that they will not be in the college football playoff. They'll have wins over Mississippi State, Florida, not Auburn, Georgia, and Alabama. And I know I think I might be leaving somebody out of there, but that's 4 ranked teams and 2 top 5 teams. Georgia kind of on the fringe there. That would be, you would be hard pressed to find another resume in all of college football that looks as good as that. And a 1-loss SEC champion is obviously getting into the college football playoff. So if Kentucky does all of those things, which I'm not saying it's going to happen, it's a long shot. They're a good team, but not a great team. I think them and Florida are kind of very similar. Good team, not a great team. Plays great defense. Terry Wilson and Benny Snell can absolutely churn up some ground in the backfield. But Kentucky, they have a clear path to the championship. They have a clear path to the SEC championship. They have a clear path to the college football playoff. Not saying it's going to happen, but you never know. The second team on this list is Wazoo, Washington State. They're probably going to be ranked 10th, somewhere right around the Kentucky range. They have 1 loss this year in the Pac-12. Ooh, almost called them the Pac-10. Showing my age a little bit here. But Wazoo, their quarterback, again, whose name escapes me, he's got a wicked name. He's on the all-name team for sure. And he's got a sweet mustache. Just awesome. I mean, this is such a Mike Leach team, it's not even funny. But these guys can sling it all over the place. They play amazing offense. They could very well win the Pac-12 this year, and they still probably won't get in. They need absolute chaos to ensue in front of them. They probably need Kentucky to beat Georgia and then lose to like Louisville or something so that they can still get in, or rather beat Georgia and then lose to somebody like Tennessee, because then they'll own the head-to-head with Georgia. And then, I mean, I'm sitting here grasping at straws trying to figure out how Wazoo can even get in at this point. So Kentucky is a 2-loss SEC champion, so they may or may not get in. But even then, you would probably put a 1-loss Bama maybe in. I don't know. Clemson would have to lose a game at some point. Notre Dame would have to lose a game at some point. And who knows what's going to happen there. Michigan, and Ohio State would each have to lose another game. So let's say Michigan loses to Penn State and then beats Ohio State and wins the Big 12, or the Big 10 rather. All of these things have to happen, and even then, who knows if Wazoo's getting in. Wazoo just has to basically win out and hope that everybody in front of them loses at least another game, if not 2 games. We're talking like 2007 levels of chaos here. You guys are kind of off kilter. I'm sorry about that. It's our first time. We're podcast virgins. This isn't even a podcast, but whatever. So that's Kentucky and that's Wazoo. The third team I have on the list is the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, back in early October, a game that I actually went to, not to brag, Oklahoma lost a classic Big 12 shootout to Texas. And then Texas goes out and lays an egg in Stillwater last weekend against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now, they have 2 losses. You have West Virginia, who's still in the mix somewhat. But I think if any team from the Big 12 is going to get in to the college football playoff, it's Oklahoma. And if you would have told me that after 3 consecutive weeks of, overtime against Army and then a very lackluster performance following, and then the just defensive lapses that they had against Texas, and then firing Stoops, their defensive coordinator, I would have told you were nuts. But then again, it's college football. Anything can happen. It's tough to say really how Oklahoma gets in. I think very similarly to Wazoo, they have to win out and some chaos has to ensue in front of them. But I don't think it's as crazy a path for Oklahoma as it is for a team like Wazoo or Kentucky. For equal and opposite reasons, obviously. Kentucky's path is crazy because of who they still have to play. Wazoo's path is crazy because of who they need to lose. I think Oklahoma, they need to win out, obviously, and they need to go and win the Big 12 championship game, which is great because 2 or 3 years ago, when the Big 12 didn't have a Big 12 championship game, I would have said Oklahoma's done. There's no way that they get in. But having that extra game and getting that extra, I'm assuming either a Texas or a West Virginia on their resume, really helps. And then all you really need to happen there is like the Michigan, Georgia, LSU in that little order, that 4, 5, 6. You need all of those guys to have 2 losses. And then I believe a 1-loss Big 12 team would get in. It's tough to say, really. The committee has not been too kind in recent years to certain conferences. Pac-12 last year, Big 12, was it 2 years ago? And it all depends on what Notre Dame does. Notre Dame is kind of the wild card here. That's the one that's messing everything up for the Pac-12 and the Big 12, because one of those 2 conferences is definitely not getting in. It could be that both of them aren't getting in. It's right now the top 5 for me is Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, LSU, Michigan. That's 2 SEC teams, an ACC team, a Big 10 team, and an independent. And all that whole logjam, 1 through 5, and then I guess if you want to throw Georgia in there, 6, and then Oklahoma's probably at 7. So they're looking up at that saying, okay, what do we have to do to get in here? You kind of need some things to go your way. You definitely don't control your own destiny. I think everybody in the top 6 that I named, Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, LSU, Michigan, Georgia, I think all of those guys control their own destiny. Anybody outside of the top 6, that includes Oklahoma, that includes Wazoo, that includes Kentucky, that includes, dare I say, UCF, which don't get your hopes up. You're not getting in. There's no chance you're getting in, not with that schedule you play. But I think any one of those teams outside of the top 6 does not control their own destiny. Top 6, you still have every opportunity in front of you to win, to get in. Georgia has to win out, but if they win out, they're in. Hang on. I lost myself there for a second. Damn computer. Okay, we're back. So Georgia gets in if they win out, absolutely, because that would mean that Bama gets knocked off. Michigan gets in if they win out easily. A one-loss Big Ten team is definitely getting in. LSU, if they win out, they're in, because that means they beat Bama and the SEC East champion, whoever that may be. Notre Dame definitely controls their own destiny. They're undefeated right now. The committee seems to be very high on them based on a pretty good strength of schedule, and of course the brand name, it's Notre Dame. Clemson controls their own destiny. They're undefeated. If they win the ACC, they're in. Bama obviously controls their own destiny. They are far and away the best team in the college football sphere right now. And then, oddly enough, Kentucky. I think Kentucky's the only team outside of that top 6 that controls their own destiny just because of who they still play. But we'll see. The college football rankings will be out tomorrow. I mean, tomorrow as of recording this, tonight, probably by the time that you get done watching this. 8 p.m. Eastern, that's 7 p.m. my time. After those drop, I will take a look at them, see what we got right, what we got wrong, and I'll get back to you guys, and then we'll analyze it, and I will see you guys shortly. Thanks for watching.